I love when we don't coordinate songs and sermons and then things just kind of work out and line up the way they're supposed to. Sang a song this morning that said, Lord, I need you every hour, I need you. Amen? Can anybody say amen to that?
That's right.
How many hours are in a day? How many hours are in a week? How many hours are in a year? 8,736. Seems like a lot, doesn't it? How many of you in the last week, month, year have said, oh, I wish there was more than 24 hours in a day? Do I just hit this button to the right here and it makes my slide come up? Look at that. Time keeps on ticking. Now, the reason that I said it and called it this way is that 1977, Steve Miller Band released a song called Fly Like an Eagle. And if I sing it, time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future. Okay, you can all sing that with me. My whole life, until just a couple years ago, I thought that the lyrics were ticking. And I've always sung it, time keeps on ticking. I've probably played it and sung it, time keeps on ticking. I never paid any attention. So this morning, I want to say, whether it's slipping or ticking, time is continuously moving, okay? Time is the heritage of every person. Whether you're a king, a pauper, a street sweeper, an astronomer, a truck driver, a doctor, a lawyer, a business tycoon, a grocery clerk, high school student, toddler, each of us has the same number of hours in a day. Many necessities and opportunities demand much of our day, and our work takes up a large percentage of our life. Being a good husband or wife, father, mother, employer, employee, son, daughter, neighbor requires time. A survey was conducted by the U.S. News and World Report back in 1988. They surveyed 6,000 people on about how the average American spends their time. In a lifetime, as reported in January 30th issue of 1989, they discovered that the average American will spend, this is wild, 6 months sitting at stoplights. 8 months. 8 months opening junk mail. 1 year looking for misplaced objects. That's way longer for me, I'm sure. I've already got that in my short 39 years. 2 years unsuccessfully returning phone calls. 4 years doing housework. 5 years waiting in line. Those lines aren't long. 6 years eating. Or 16, depending on. 30 years later. That was 30 years ago. How many of us have a smartphone in our pocket? I won't pick on you about how much time you waste every day staring at that little screen. Guilty as charged. Think about that. The little game that you play, the little Instagram. I had to get rid of Facebook a couple years ago, and somehow I got out of Facebook, and I've never gone back. I love it. I used to be so hopelessly addicted to Facebook for no reason. Just because and I'm still the same way with Instagram. If I have my phone in my hand, it's like, oh, what's happening on Instagram? What's happening on Solomon's Word? Anyway. Each of us here today has been given the same amount of hours each day. Unless you live in a different universe than I do, each day still has 24 hours in it, in which we eat, sleep, do chores, menial tasks, etc. And as we start our journey into Christian stewardship, we start out by looking at how we should be what? Good stewards of one of our most precious resources, our time. Psalms 90:12. Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. This is the 90th Psalm. The psalmist prays that God would teach him and others to become good stewards with time. Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. When it comes to the end of your life, your entire impact on this world will be boiled down to a 1-inch hyphen between the day you were born and the day you die. The psalmist knew that life is relatively short against the span of God's existence and eternity. God operates outside of the confines of time. Time is what we know. Time is how we regulate and dictate our lives. You could say that time, transcendent of culture, religion, philosophy, we all share that. We're all bound to a 24-hour clock, and time keeps on ticking. The psalmist knew that life is relatively short against the span of God's existence in eternity. In 90:10 it says, our days may come to 70 or 80 years if our strength endures. In a sense, the psalmist, a guy we all know named Moses, asked God for the grace to allow him to number his days so that he could find the value in each day. Each day he wanted to gain a heart of wisdom, or as it says in the King James Version, that we may apply our hearts to wisdom. Not only did he want us to value each day that he had, but he also wanted God to give him the wisdom to see the hand of God move in his life each day. He was asking for the ability to discern the things of God, and in learning his will and his ways, apply them to make his life better. 30 years after that survey, we live in a fast-paced society. Amen? Here, there, and everywhere. Things are changing at a faster pace than when we were children, than when I was a child, than when some of you that are older than me, than you were a child. You hear stories of how awesome the 50s were. I grew up in the 80s in a little coal town in Pennsylvania, and it was very slow-paced. I lived for a while in some larger metropolitan areas, fast-paced, and I'm glad to be back in in Potter County. I lived in Franklin County, Virginia for a long time. I always do that. I'm sorry, sweetie. She gets so embarrassed. I'm glad to live in Potter County now where things move a little bit slower. But they still tick at the same pace. We still only have 24 hours in a day, even if things move a little slower. So Moses was asking for the ability to discern the things of God, and in learning his will and ways, apply them, like I said, to make his life better. In this fast-paced society, in order to try to keep up, we find ourselves running here and there. Time, instead of being something that we cherish, becomes a nuisance. We thrive in the fast lane of life, only to come home or come to church and complain about how busy our lives are. The sermon is for me this morning, by the way. This is a fresh one. Somebody once said we master our minutes or we become slaves to them. We use time or time uses us. The hardest thing to hand over to God is what? Our time. Our treasure is a simple manner in one aspect. We know that he asks for a tithe or 10%. I'm not going to ask you for your money this morning. But if we know the type of things that God has blessed us with, many are more than willing to worship God by using these gifts. But our time is our own. Or so we like to think. God has granted us the grace to get out of bed in the morning. Did you all get up this morning? Are you all here? Our hearts are still beating. Our brains are still waving. What are the neurons? Ask Dr. Heller to help me out there. Our lungs are still supplying oxygen to all parts of our bodies. And despite how busy we may be or we make ourselves, God is asking for our time. Now hear me. If Cain and Abel, we know the story of Cain and Abel in the Bible, if their offering were based on first fruit principle, has anybody ever heard that? The first fruit principle, the first of what I have, the best of what I have, I give to God. Shouldn't the use of our time fall into that category as well? Ouch. Ephesians 5. Be very careful then how you live, not as the unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Ephesians 5 reveals God's expectation for us relating to time. In the New King James, Paul addresses the Ephesians this way. He says, see then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Now, circumspectively, circumference, I got the gist, but I had to look it up. Our English word circumspect comes from the Latin circumspicere, and Pardon my linguistics. I am not a theologian nor a scholar of any kind. That means to look around, about on all hands, to be very watchful, wary, and cautious, in order to avoid danger and discern enemies. But the original Greek word, akribose, probably butchered that, but that's okay. Does anybody speak Greek in here? We're good. That word means correctly, accurately, consistently, or perfectly. We who have received the truth are to be careful of our conduct and to walk by the rule which God has given you. When one of his disciples said, "What's the greatest commandment?" to Jesus, in Matthew 22, he replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. What was Jesus saying? Everything that you've ever learned, disciple, is great. I'm glad that you've kept the law. I'm glad that you're doing your best to at this point, live a holy Jewish lifestyle as he's talking to his disciples. But he said all of the law and everything that our forefathers have said, all the prophets that have come before us, including Moses from the psalm that we just read about. Jesus said, all the law and the prophets hang on these two things. Love God and love people. I way overcomplicate the gospel on a daily basis. Is anybody else with me? Jesus said, love God, love people. On the back wall, healing, transformation, and mission. What's our job inside of that? Healing, transformation, and mission. Love God, love people. If we are walking circumspectly, okay, correctly, accurately, consistently, perfectly, or being very careful about the way that we use our time, then two questions should arise. Number one, have I faithfully served God with the time that he has given me? I have tattoos that you've seen, I'm sure. And one that I got a long time ago, it says Carpe Diem, which is Latin for seize the day. And the reason that I got that is because when I was younger, and anybody remember the movie Dead Poets Society? One of Robin Williams', in my opinion, greatest films. My dad took me to the movie in the theater, and it was the first adult movie that I really kind of got in public. You know, I'd gone to the movie theater a bunch, but I remember sitting there, and at the end, when the students get up on the desk and say, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," as a young boy, I lost it in the theater. And I got it, but I didn't really get it until I was older and later in life. And my dad would always say, Carpe Diem. And then sending me out the door at school, there was a few times, not every day, but when we were in the same place, he left for work earlier than me, but he would just say, get the most out of today, I had a teacher in school that used to tell me, do all you can and can all you get. That's a really good way to live. But here I have, foolishly enough, permanently emblazoned on my arm, Carpe Diem. And I don't look at it very often. It's upside down, so whoever wants to look at it can look at it, but you can't read it anyway, so it's pointless. But I have it on my body. I took the time and paid money to have somebody put it on me. And yet I'm still guilty of not doing that. Okay? Have I faithfully served God with the time that he's given me? Question number 2. Have I showed God to those around me? In our busyness, it's easy to neglect an unseen God. Maybe you've been in a situation where you have an early appointment or a meeting, and in your haste to be on time, you've neglected to center yourself for the day. Didn't pray that morning. If you do a devotions in the morning or read your Bible in the morning or do, whatever it is, however you connect in the morning, you didn't have time for that today. Just so busy. From there, what happens? Your day quickly gets away from you until it's bedtime. And you can barely keep your eyes open, let alone focus on him. There's a joke in the Pepper clan. They call everything something house. The bed house, the church house, the work house. It's just a thing that we say. So oftentimes Rachel will text me in the middle of the day, ugh, ... I'm ready for the bed house. That doesn't mean that, she wants to go home and get in bed. She's been saying, sorry, we're all married here, some of us. That's not what she's saying. She's saying, I'm so tired that it's 10 o'clock in the morning and I'm ready to be asleep. I'm exhausted. Oftentimes we come home and by the time we get kids fed, kids bathed, homework done, dishes cleaned up, dog outside, dog hair picked up, dog back outside, dog hair picked up one more time, kids upstairs, teeth brushed. Does everybody have a pull-up on? Okay, we're good. Time to go to bed. And then it's like we look at each other and it's like, whew, it's 8 o'clock. Yeah, let's go to bed. There we are. But had that day started a little differently, could perhaps we have had a better grasp on the course of the day? Could our focus have been a little more centered on what God had for us that day as opposed to the busyness of our lives? When we think of tithing, our thoughts naturally drift to the thought of money. Some have a hard time giving God 10% of their finances. So this next thought's going to be a killer. What would your day look like if you gave God 10% of your day? There's actually churches and congregations that believe that, and they give God 2 hours and 24 minutes out of every day. That's a real thing. Kind of weird. But for those of you that find that there's not enough hours in the day to get things done, how'd you feel about giving your first 2.5 hours to him every day? Feel like murder. It'd be torturous. I hear stories of great women of faith and men of faith that prayed for hours and hours and hours every day. And guess what? They still had 24 hours a day, and they still managed to get everything done. And they were probably a whole lot happier doing it. Now, I'm not suggesting that tomorrow morning you get up and pray for 2.5 hours. It'd be awesome. I won't be doing that with you. But what if we did? What if we spent 5 minutes? What if we spent 90 seconds? It seems impossible, but look at it this way. The average Christian spends a total, listen to this statistic. The average Christian spends a total of 15 minutes a week in prayer. How long is a sitcom? Average American sitcom? 21 to 22 minutes without commercials. Takes 30 minutes to watch it. Think about how fast it goes to watch an episode on Netflix. That's twice as long in one shot as the average Christian prays in a week. If we can spend an average of, Americans spend an average of 3 hours a day in front of the television. And I'm guilty. I socked some Netflix time in because at 8 o'clock, we're so tired that the only thing that we can do is turn on the show and sit there like vegetating zombies someday. Just like, here we are. This is it. Only 10 more hours till we get to do it all over again. Does anybody ever feel that way? So if we can spend 15 minutes a week on average praying and 3 hours a day averaging, that's 21 hours a week in front of the television. Something's got to be out of whack. Our day should also be invested in our neighbors. That's not just referring to the person next door, but also the people in your house. This one's going to hurt. I believe that you would not think of only giving your husband, your wife, your children, etc., 15 minutes a week. Sometimes we work so hard for our family that they only get the rest of us. The leftovers. I'm talking to myself right now. Okay? You can get convicted with me, but I'm not pointing fingers here. Sometimes we're so busy that when we get home, our family only gets the leftovers. Is that all right if I just get real this morning? I'm not getting too spiritual. I'm just, is that okay? Everybody all right if I just drop some simple stuff that the Lord's really working on me about? There have been days when I've been going nonstop. I work a busy day, booked up with many different clients, meetings, appointments, band practice, etc. That when I get home, I am absolutely exhausted. The time that I have to devote to my wife and kids are not the best. I'll be moody, snappy, grouchy. Rachel and the kids want nothing to do with me. Why? Because by my actions, I'm very simply saying, I want nothing to do with you. Ouch. My 9-year-old gets it. If she's coming up to me, we were just talking this morning about Piper and how she'll say, Mama, 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 Mama. Yes, Piper. Rachel's doing her makeup in the mirror. Yes, Mom. Or yes, Piper. Mama, Mama, Mama. She will not stop. Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. She will not stop until you make eye contact with her. 5 years old, special needs, delayed. Whatever label you want to put on her. But at 5 years old, she recognizes that if I'm not looking at her, I'm not listening to her. She's 5. Mama, Mama, Mama. How many times in the last week has God said in your ear, my son, my son, my son, my daughter, my daughter. Hey, hey, hey. I just want you to look at me. This one hits home for me today, I'm sorry. In my life, I found that the quality time I invest with God and my family affects my day. As we are told in Psalms 90, life is short. We must prioritize our lives. God must come first. Family's the next logical progression. And then the rest should fall into line. I get it, emergencies arise, but even they can be dealt with if we deal with our first two greatest relationships first. And I can tell you from experience that if you're right with God and you're right with your family, you can walk through anything. Anything. If you're right with God and you're right with your family, you can do anything. Look around you. Take a second, just straighten your neck around. Look at the people in this room. This is your extended family. This is a community. This is a community of believers that say, we're going to do life together. Life groups are starting this week. If you don't have one, get into one. Plug into it. Just check it out. Go one time. If you hate it, don't go again. You're not going to hate it. Make the time. It's maybe 2 hours a week. Cut out your favorite TV show for the next 8 weeks. You willing to give it to God so that you can rearrange your schedule a little bit to come here? I recently got asked by Pastor Kevin to do a discipleship group triad with a couple of guys in the church. Got the book, was gung-ho about it. I was excited. I read the introduction and I'm like, this is going to be awesome. When are we going to do this? I have no time for this. And then Ian came to me and he was like, man, we're really busy and we got a lot going on. We were excited, but what do you think about doing it on Wednesdays after worship team? And I'm like, sweet, that'll be perfect. Two of us will already be there and it'll work. And then as I was preparing and doing notes this week and stuff, I thought, man, like, I'm so excited to do that and to partner with these brothers and to walk through this thing together and learn and grow in faith and do all the things. But like in the back of my brain, it was one more thing, one more commitment, one more this, that, and the other thing. What? So I can go home and watch The Office? So that I can go home and watch Andy Griffith's show? So that I can go home and sit on my porch and complain about how many water trucks drive past my house? If you drive a water truck, God bless you. I don't like you very much, but God bless you. I'm kidding. I'm thankful for the resources that we have here in Potter County. But I find that when I put things in order, God first, my family second, everything else seems to fall in line. When we walk circumspectly, you show your principles, which are holy and good, by a corresponding conduct. It's, we want to get real philosophical here this morning. It's a yin and yang thing. But Jesus said, love God and love your neighbors. And if you do that, and if you follow those commandments, separate from any other philosophy in the world that has ever existed, there will be corresponding conduct. There is a natural reaction to the actions that you have set forth. It just happens. It might not happen instantaneously, but it starts to happen. And I know that because it's happening in my own life. I can speak from experience. The more that I press into the things of God, the happier I am. The more I press into the things of God and the plans and purposes and the times that he has for me to be doing things, the more time I have to enjoy the other things that in my life that I think should be a priority when I'm not following love God, love people. See, when you love something else and that becomes number one, the whole order gets out of whack. And then there's not enough time in the day. I'm so busy. I'm exhausted all the time. I can't do this anymore. Anybody live there? Don't only profess, but live the gospel. As you embrace all its promises, be careful also to embrace all its precepts. And behave yourselves so that your enemies may never be able to say that you are holy in your doctrines and profession, but irregular in your lives. This is huge for me because, you're a Christian now. You don't listen to secular music, and you don't swear, and you don't cuss, and you don't go to the bar, and you don't drink, and you don't. All these things that you're not supposed to do, that I got so focused on the don'ts that I didn't do any of the do's. And Jesus kept it real simple by saying what? I've said it 10 times. Love God, love people. And when I'm so concerned about being righteous and holy and pointing my finger at this one and that one, and I've got this agenda and I've got that agenda, and I'm right and you're wrong because I'm a Christian and blah, 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 blah. Wrong. I'm sorry. Let's just be realistic. It's not right. Because God said, love me and love my people. Love your neighbors as I love them. And then everything else starts to fall in the line. And this church is a church that loves people. I'm proud to say that I'm a member of this church because there's people in this church that go out of their way to love on people, that go out of their way to show Jesus to other people, that not only talk the talk but walk the walk. And in reality, they do a whole lot more walking than they do talking. And when you think about it, Jesus spent 3 years in a public ministry. All of this, our whole theological construct is based on a man that spent 3 years primarily with 12 guys in the woods or desert, whatever, outside. Okay, think about that. And we overcomplicate it into this huge, grandiose thing. He gave them his time. His time. 24 hours a day. Gotta go back to the front. 168 hours a week. 8,736 hours a year. Times 3. I'm not going to even attempt that. I like what John Wesley has to say. With all possible care, redeeming the time, saving all you can for the best purposes, buying every possible moment out of the hands of sin and Satan, out of the hands of sloth, ease, pleasure, worldly business, the more diligently, because the present are evil days, days of the grossest ignorance, immorality, and profaneness. Turn on the news. This was written a while back. Because the present are evil days, days of the grossest ignorance, immorality, and profaneness. We don't have time as followers of the way. We don't have time to fool around in counter sport. He might come back this afternoon. He might come back 1,000 years from now. That's not my point. We're measured out a certain amount of time. We all get 24 hours. And we don't have the time as a community of believers to not love God with everything we have and to not love our neighbors as ourselves. We live in a technological era where we use Facebook and the internet, and people are watching live right now, potentially. And we live in this incredible thing where we can get from one place to the other. They're developing a jet right now that can fly, is going to be able to fly for, I think it's 22 hours, direct flights from New York to Australia. I mean, the technological advancements that we have, all what? To save time. All of these things have been developed to increase productivity, to increase the vast global communication that we have, and we use it to play. Give me a game on Facebook. Somebody help me. We use it to play Candy Crush. Or I use it to troll my friends on Instagram and look at what all their latest and greatest is. Or I use them to watch the Office episode that I've seen 737 times and can quote the words. It's pretty embarrassing when I can sit there and quote the words, but I can't quote John chapter 8, for example. Probably less words. Why? Because my time is not prioritized where it needs to be. And that's for me. I'm not telling you how to live your life. I'm merely making suggestions. The phrase redeeming the time is a very descriptive one. It means to buy up those moments which others seem to throw away. It means seizing opportunities to rescue or recover time from waste, thereby using our time wisely. Let time become your chief commodity. Deal with it in that day alone. Buy it all up. Use every portion of it wisely to the glory of God. Time is that on which eternity depends. When we leave time, we go into no time. I don't know how that works. We're not going to go there today. Don't worry. But time, we want to get really technical. Time doesn't really exist in God, right? That's kind of scary when you think about it. If God is eternal, then all of this is eternal. The universe has never stopped expanding. We don't know where the end of it is because it hasn't stopped universing. I want to say something in closing to all the people who are trying to keep all their plates spinning at once. You ever seen that guy? I love that guy. The spinning plate guy. They're so great. The guys that can do that, it blows my mind. Saw a guy once do that, spinning plates, riding a unicycle. No joke. It's real life. I can't even walk and chew gum at the same time. So I want to say this to somebody that's trying to keep the plate spinning and it's just about to tip and you run over and got to get the kids and I'm spinning the plates. You can't do it all. You can't. We talked about anxiety the last time I was up here and how to thin out the load you're carrying. You can't do it all. There comes a time when you need to stop. We're told that we need to redeem our time because the days are evil. Let me say it this way. There are too many things out there that will rob you of your time. This time can be better used in serving God and your neighbors. And let me tell you something. The devil doesn't care if you're busy in your own life. Doesn't care if you're busy in church life. Doesn't care if you're busy in family life. If he can keep you so busy that your time with God suffers, then guess what? Got you right where he wants you. Distracted people are an ineffective people. That's just a simple battle strategy. If you can divide, you can conquer. But I want to stand up in front of us today and challenge us as a community here at the Coudersport Christian and Missionary Alliance Church that we're not going to be divided. We're going to do community and unity. And we can redeem the time in Coudersport that so many of us, me first, have wasted by not loving God and loving people. Take a look at your life. Are you too busy? Are you denying God the best that you can be? Are you robbing your family and friends of you? Take a careful look at your life and look at the areas where you feel the wheel is spinning out of control. Ask God to give you the grace to redeem your time wisely. Ask him to help you, as the scripture says, to number your days aright. We've all been given 24 hours a day in which we live. Let's choose today to declare before God and before each other that we will use our time wisely. Let us encourage each other. Let us love God and love our neighbors. So this week, if you write down one thing today, write this down. How will I use my time this week? I'm not asking you to change your whole life this afternoon. I'm asking you to purposely, for one moment of time this week, whether it be for a minute or an hour or 2.5 hours or whatever, purpose this week to spend some time in your week loving God and loving people. Amen? Thank you guys. Be blessed.